Do you believe in evolution?
I put my belief in the scientists and all the evidence that they say proves evolution. If someone had that much evidence against evolution and they published it in a peer-reviewed journal and it were accepted as right, I would renounce evolution at the drop of that. If I could see evidence and someone put forward to me, this is why evolution isn't real, I'd say fair dues. You've got the evidence. Yeah, you can't argue with evidence, and I'd renounce evolution like that. But as it stands, I'm looking into it myself. I can see examples of evolution just stood in the garden having a spliff. I can see how trees are similar. I can see how they've got a common ancestry. I can look at my dog and see he's a mammal. I can see it's got canine teeth just like me. I can see how its eyes are positioned on its head. I can see how its nose is positioned on its face, how its ears are just slightly above where ours are. I can see how its paws and its legs all have similar bits to mine. You can see evolution just walking about in the street. I can't understand how people cannot believe in it when it's so prevalent. I think
the reason that you that I think you'll find most people don't believe in evolution is because actually people believe in something very, very similar to it that actually defines something very different. So evolution isn't what many people see. Most of the evidence that people see for evolution actually is exactly the same evidence that a Christian would use for a concept called adaptation. Have you heard of adaptation?
I think I'm aware of the concept, but
adaptation is effectively that God has given animals and plants and all living things the ability to adapt to its surrounding circumstances and influences so that it can live and succeed in the best possible way in the environment that it's in, and so that the things adapt within their kingdoms to define different genuses and subgroups within kingdoms of animals. Where evolution takes a step beyond that is that evolution says that the actual kingdom groups themselves, such as fungi and birds and mammals and fish, they actually individually had a common ancestry through which they adapted to a point beyond the definition of kingdom. In the Bible it says that God made all the animals and to each their kind, and that he made them specific. And so adaptation is that like God made a dog, then from those dogs all the dogs that ever were came to be. But at no point was a dog, say, a frog, or went back through that line of lineage. So a lot of the evidence that is used for evolution generally is actually exactly the same evidence that anyone would ever use for adaptation. When you go back before that, when you start to define kingdom, there is actually no published evidence.
Sorry, 1 second, mate. Marley. Sorry, mate.
That's all right. That's okay.
Marley, get in.
Great timing for that, mate.
No, sorry, man. Right, go on. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, if you go back way back to before you start to get to this definition of kingdoms, that evolutionary process which splits adaptation from evolution is so far back there isn't actually any great body of evidence for it. I mean, most people this that's what they call the missing links and stuff there, but there's so many of them, and a lot of the things are breaking down over time. The connections between the kingdoms, they realise that the sublime difference between them is quite far-reaching. Even though we share things like basic DNA, the actual cross between them is quite a massive step. So whether or not you believe me, I'm saying that it's another question. That you'd end up having a big argument about evidence, which once again it comes down to which scientists you believe, because there are scientists on both sides arguing it. It's just, because they say even science isn't unbiased, because science has focuses. When you go into science, you make an experiment because you're expecting a result, and so they then some people are definitely looking for things to research for their things. They look for the trees of life and stuff that goes further down. Some people are looking for creationist evidence and stuff, and it seems that both groups find it and publish their papers. It's just some are completely overruled by others because they have, I think you start to get more.
Because the reason. Sorry, mate, it keeps breaking up. The reason these papers that don't get rubbished and stays a prevailing area in their aspect are because their hypotheses can be seen so clearly by other scientists who also accept it, because that's the beauty of a theory. You can test it, and if it's wrong, they change it.
That's it. And that's why the adaptation and evolution is still a massive argument, because actually it's so hard for both either to rubbish either's idea, because they're so closely interlinked, apart from that being at the beginning. I mean, really, when it comes to evolution, what a scientist has to be able to say is, how can you make, I mean, the real question isn't about whether or not you can make one living thing into another living thing. I mean, that, I don't know if that is technically possible. I've never seen it, like...
This is it, mate. Like, we've grown a human ear on a rabbit. We've transplanted animal organs into people successfully. We've fucking...
Oh, yeah, we're intelligent beings with vast...
No, but this is it.
That starts to become an argument for intelligent design more than anything.
It doesn't.
If you get like to the level of like actually where you can actually create, like you can actually mould life, not create life, but mould life from these different things. But I mean, the question becomes: if you go back to the beginning, at what point do you think, as an evolutionist, did inanimate matter, just stardust, become life? At what point did that just create the cosmic, drama? When did that inanimate thing begin to move?
This isn't. I'm not a highly respected scientist in a field where I've got an overall consensus that I am an expert in my field in evolution. So I can't start giving you time frames and whatnot. But as a point, like from my point of view, it happened a long time ago. I can see the similarities and I can see the differences, and I can see that the difference between me and a horse is much greater than between me and a monkey. But I can still see the point where that's verged off. And if it goes back that far, then it must go back further. And if it must go back further, then it must go back further. And if they find life on another planet, like, what happens then? Like, does that mean God created other people that he loved as well as us, or other beings? Or there's every argument from the religious point of view goes back to the same point of it relying on there being no way of proving it wrong. Like, but evolution's happened. You can see it, and if you can't see it, then you've got your blinkers on.
I think you're right. I think what you're calling evolution, I'm calling adaptation. And I can see it amazing. I can see the difference between black and white moths. I can see the difference between, the different animal groups and stuff within subspecies, how one thing would grow longer. Things. I mean, what's amazing actually is that the more we spend time looking into our genetics, the more we realise what a powerful factor it is, and how quickly we can create adaptation within a subgroup. We're talking in a matter of generations. Things can change their physical forms to become other things. It's quite amazing, and also just how much of an effect the world around us has on our DNA. Like, they've worked out that actually the gene that is coded for violence in human beings, the gene that makes people more likely to become violent people, is actually something that people used to say, like, okay, I'm just a product of my genes. I just am an angry person. I just am a this or that. It's because of who I am. But then they actually did a study in where was it? No, not Turkey, Ukraine, 1939. The Germans starved 30 million Ukrainians, and they killed loads of people. Horrific. But during that time, they actually did a scientific experiment to work out what sort of effect that kind of privation would have on babies. And they took samples of these third trimester babies, and they let them be born, they let them grow. And what happened is that the babies, when they were starving inside the womb, it fired off a bunch of genetic codes that basically meant that they just take on loads and loads of energy whenever they could, just to survive. But what happened is, even after they were taken out of that privation situation where they were starving, the babies would still continue always to take on extra things, until when they followed this up into the adulthood of these people, they ended up all having massive problems with heart problems, cholesterol, and obesity, because they'd always, forever after, take on loads of extra fat. from their food, from their childhood, and they realise actually that the evil done to babies actually affects and can fire up different parts of the genetic code to define who we are. So that people, in a way, when people say, "Oh, I am a product of things," it's actually that you are a product of the bad things that have been done to you. So even our genetics can be affected by our surroundings, not our